Standing Chimney in Lawrence County, Pennsylvania is open every Saturday in November from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and Black Friday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. We have fresh baked goods and a wide array of unique gift items and decor for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Check out facebook.com/standingchimney for more information.
Hello and welcome to In the Kitchen with Mary Mac. Today we're going to share our meatloaf recipe with you. This is a classic in our family. We really like it. So I thought you might like it as well. It's a little different than most meatloaf recipes. Has some vegetables in there. It's a very tender sort of a meatloaf. A lot of times meatloaf can be rather dense, but this meatloaf is just a very nice, flavorful, moist, good, delicious meatloaf. So I'm going to give you the recipe and give you a couple of little variations as we go along with it. So I thought I'd throw this in. I was looking at our list of podcasts to see what we're going to do this week. We try to keep them so, you get a dessert and then you get a side dish and you get a meal and whatever and go along. And I thought, we haven't done a meatloaf. It's probably meatloaf time. So here we go. First of all, you need a nice pan to do a meatloaf in. A loaf pan works really well. I have a pottery loaf pan that my husband got me a few years ago, and it works really nice for meatloaf. It doesn't like stick in it like a metal pan. If you do a meatloaf in a metal pan, it will stick. And we have a good solution for that too. A glass dish works really nice. And you don't have to make as large of a meatloaf as your pan is. So you can use a pan that's bigger. Some of the loaf pans that you get that are glass and porcelain are made for pound cake, I think. They're like enormous or super long or an odd size, so whatever you make in there comes out like really big, like an odd big size. So they work nice for meatloaf, actually, because you can form your loaf as you're mixing it. You can form your loaf and set it in there. It does not have to touch the sides of the pan. Like you don't have to press it into the pan to form it into a loaf. You can form it into a loaf in the bowl that you mix it up in, or you can move it onto a plate and form it into a loaf and just set it in the pan. So don't go buy something special to make a meatloaf in because you don't have to do that.
The last few times I've made meatloaf, because my only loaf pan is metal and oh boy, it sticks bad in that. I believe it's 8-inch, maybe it's 9-inch, but it is a glass square pan.
Oh,
yeah. So the
yeah.
meatloaf is just in the middle of it, but it's nowhere near the sides, onto the sides, because it's a square pan, but it works fine.
Now here's a trick that I've done a couple of times, and I actually like to do this when I remember. I don't always remember, but you can cut parchment paper to line your pan with. And what you basically do is you cut a rectangle of parchment paper and make a cut in each corner so that when you slide it down into the pan, the place where you made the cut kind of overlaps. And you can make a liner you can do this for anything, really. You can do this for brownies or for a cake or anything like that that's going to be square. So you can lift it out of the pan real easy. It's just a nice little trick. But it works really nice for meatloafs because, well, number one, you're not going to lift the meatloaf out of the pan on the parchment paper, but boy, does it save on the cleanup, because the meatloaf, you can scoop it out of there with the spatula or lifter or whatever, but it doesn't stick to the pan, number one. And the pan, sometimes when you make a meatloaf, like the very edge of it will leave a crust the whole way around it from it cooking. So saves a ton of cleanup. And then what I do is I grease the parchment paper, and then, it's not going to stick to it. So that's my cleanup tip. So get your loaf pan and prep it before you start mixing your meatloaf up. So whatever you're going to use, if you're just going to use a glass or porcelain pan and you don't want to line it, grease it with shortening. If you're going to line it with the parchment paper, go ahead and do that and then grease it. Okay? So pan is ready. Preheat your oven to 350. Now, what you want to do is get your ingredients kind of prepped ahead of time. So here we go on the list. You need the 1 pound of lean ground beef. You'll need 1 large or extra large egg, a half cup of plain breadcrumbs, one stalk of celery diced, and I would say like a small stalk of celery. If it's a pretty big stalk, then just do half. One carrot shredded fine, and the same thing if it's a really big carrot, just shred half of it. One small onion diced. Now, when you put these in the meatloaf as is and bake them, they won't be completely soft. There'll be a slight little crunch to them. If you don't like that, we do like it, but if you don't like it, you can saute these vegetables in some olive oil to soften them for a couple of minutes. Celery takes a little bit longer to cook, so what I do is put the celery in first and start to saute it, and then the onion. And you're going to kind of sweat them so they're not fully cooked, but they're softened. And then add your carrot and saute. Remove it from heat and stir it around a little bit to cool it off. You can even scrape it into a bowl and let it cool off and just set it aside while you're doing your other stuff. Okay. So you, like I said, you don't have to saute them, but they'll be like a little, like sort of like crisp tender in there. But I actually like that little different texture in there. Okay. You'll need a half teaspoon of salt, an eighth teaspoon of pepper, 1 teaspoon of minced garlic, 1 teaspoon of parsley. You're also going to need Heinz ketchup to put on top when you bake it, if you want. You do not have to put ketchup on meatloaf to bake it. Some people don't.
I do not like ketchup at all. So when I make meatloaf, I use Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce.
Or you can do that weird thing.
I mean, it works pretty much exactly the same, but
Yeah.
I just don't like the taste of ketchup.
Yeah, just a different flavor.
Yeah.
You could use the barbecue sauce or nothing. You don't have to have anything on your meatloaf, but we like Heinz ketchup. So that's what I put on it. Okay, so don't go buying some other substandard ketchup and trying to put it on there. It's Heinz or nothing. Okay, so you're going to put your ingredients into a mixing bowl. Put your ground beef in first and break it up a little bit, okay? So it's not in one big clump, just kind of break it all up. Sprinkle the breadcrumbs on the top of that. Put your celery, carrots, onions, and garlic in, salt and pepper, and parsley. And you want to take that and mix it together with your fingers a little bit so that it's everything's sort of dispersed pretty well. Then add your egg. And add your egg in there, and now you're going to knead it and mix it till it's mixed well, till the egg is mixed in well, and the celery, carrots, onions are dispersed pretty well. The breadcrumbs are dispersed pretty well. Once you get that, and also do this in a 4-quart mixing bowl, like a stainless or glass mixing bowl. Do it in a larger bowl because that way you'll have enough room to form it into a loaf or start it forming it into a loaf. So once you get that all mixed up real nice, form it into your loaf, and don't make it too flat. Make it like a rounded, like a nice, like you're making a little loaf of bread, And then you're going to set that into your prepared pan and kind of pat it into shape so it's got a nice loaf shape to it. Now, if you're going to put a topping on it, you want to take your fingers and press down in the middle of your loaf so you have a flat spot for your ketchup to kind of rest on, and then just take some ketchup. It's probably about 4 tablespoons or so, and put that on the top and just lightly spread it right across the top. Now you're going to put this into the oven and bake it for about an hour. I checked mine with the meat thermometer before I took it out yesterday, and it was registering about 175, 180 throughout. And I thought that was, I let that go I think it was an hour, I think it was in there. And then take it out and let it sit for about 5 minutes, remove it from the pan to a plate, and slice it and serve it. And you can serve it with ketchup on the side. If you don't have any topping on it, you can actually serve this with brown gravy. It's very good. We typically have mashed potatoes or baked potatoes with it. Last night we had smashed redskins with our meatloaf and green beans, and it was really good. It made a nice dinner. And this is a nice, quick dinner thing that you can whip up. Another great thing with this recipe that you can do is you can mix it up and put it in the freezer without baking it. So you can actually take this meatloaf. Let's say you were going to make a meatloaf and you said, I'm going to make 4 meatloaves and then I'll put 3 in the freezer and have one. You can do that. Just times this recipe times 4, divide it into 4 meatloaves, and make your loaf, form your loaf, set it on a cookie sheet and wrap it with plastic wrap, put it on a cookie sheet and freeze it. When it's frozen, pop that off of the cookie sheet and put it into a Ziploc bag. And now you've got a meatloaf all ready to go. So when you want to bake that, take it out of the freezer, thaw it in your refrigerator, and just put it in the oven and bake it. And you're all ready to go. So it's a real time saver. And this is just like I said, this is a classic recipe. It makes great leftovers, makes a great sandwich. You can take a slice of meatloaf, reheat it in a skillet with some olive oil, and brown it, and make that into a sandwich just like a hamburger. You can reheat it and make hot meatloaf sandwiches by slicing it thin, heating it up, putting it on bread, and then covering it with gravy and serving that with mashed potatoes. And that's your hot meatloaf sandwich like you get in a diner. So lots of good things you can do with it after you make it too. So give it a try. Hope you like it.
And make sure to check us out online on Facebook and Instagram at Mary Mac Bakehouse, on Twitter at Mobile Mary Mac and Mary Mac Podcast, and on our website, marymacpodcast.com.
Thanks a lot for listening if you did, and if you didn't, too bad for you.